Let me ask you something. What if the one metric you probably celebrate the most, that beautiful rising tide of website traffic, is actually the very thing sinking your business? It sounds crazy, right? But it's the central paradox of modern marketing, and today we are gonna solve it. The greatest strategic failure in digital marketing is the click obsession, believing that more traffic is always better, while ignoring the neurological fact that curiosity is not the same as intent. Now, this single idea really cuts right to the heart of the problem. You see, for years we've all been taught to chase clicks. We celebrate high traffic numbers as the ultimate sign that we're winning. But this obsession, it's built on a massive misunderstanding of how people actually behave online. It's a vanity metric that can hide a really painful reality. Most of the traffic you're paying for is probably doing nothing for your bottom line.
So let's break this down, because the distinction is absolutely critical. On one side, you've got curiosity. Think of it as a micro-itch. It's this fleeting, super low commitment impulse. You're scrolling, you see something shiny, and you click. It costs you nothing, so the action itself carries almost no weight. But then, on the other side, you have intent. Now, this isn't an itch. This is a real problem that someone is actively trying to solve. A user with intent isn't just browsing. They are on a mission. Their click is a high commitment action. And the single biggest mistake we make in marketing is confusing the two.
And this confusion brings us to the main villain of our story today, the digital tourist. This is the user who clicks purely out of that low commitment curiosity. They have zero desire to buy what you're selling. They were just scrolling through their feed, saw some vague ad or sensational image that triggered that little micro itch, and they clicked. They land on your page, realize it's not at all what they were looking for, and they're gone in seconds. But here's the problem. You paid for that click. And if your ad campaigns are optimized for clicks above all else, you are actively paying to attract an army of these tourists who will drain your budget, destroy your data, and deliver absolutely zero ROI.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to explore the click obsession crisis so we can really understand the damage it causes. Then we'll introduce the solution, the intent purity filter. After that, we'll get into the psychology behind it all with the psychology of the scent. From there, we'll get practical and walk through executing the intent audit. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by shifting our mindset from volume to value.
All right, let's start with the crisis itself. We really need to understand the true cost of this click obsession, because it's what puts so many well-meaning brands into what I call a financial death spiral, where they just keep spending more and more money for fewer and fewer actual results.
And this all boils down to one central question you have to ask yourself. Just look at your traffic reports. Are your ads attracting an audience, or are they just attracting a crowd? There's a huge difference. An audience is engaged, they're interested, they're qualified, they lean in. A crowd, on the other hand, is just a random collection of people who happen to wander by, they're noisy, they're distracting, and they definitely don't stick around. Your analytics hold the answer, and for a lot of us, it's a pretty harsh reality check.
So let's talk about why this happens. It's the failure of what's called the broad net strategy. It starts by optimizing for the wrong thing. Cheap clicks, your cost per click, or CPC, instead of what really matters, which is your cost per acquisition, or CPA. Now, to get those cheap clicks, you use these vague hooks that trigger curiosity, but that creates something called cognitive dissonance. The user clicks expecting one thing, and your landing page gives them something totally different. The promise is broken. This flood of low-quality visitors completely clogs your analytics, making it impossible to see what's actually working. And maybe worst of all, it confuses the ad platform's algorithms. You are literally teaching the machine to find more digital tourists for you. The end result? A completely drained budget with nothing to show for it, but a big, meaningless traffic number.
So how do we fix this mess? We can't just point out the problem. We need a system to actually solve it. And this is where we introduce a really powerful diagnostic framework called the intent purity filter.
The intent purity filter is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a systematic way of using real user behavior, actual data, to diagnose the quality of your traffic. It's not about guessing or gut feelings. It's all about measuring. Its entire purpose is to find that gap, that fundamental mismatch between what your ad promised and what your landing page actually delivered. This filter is the perfect antidote to the click obsession because it forces us to look right past the click and analyze what happens next.
Now, this filter operates as a 3-tiered data audit, and each step reveals a deeper layer of truth about your traffic. First up is bounce velocity triage, which helps us spot the most obvious broken promises right away. Second, we have active searcher correlation, which lets us find those genuinely interested users, even if they don't buy immediately. And third, algorithmic signal correction,
which is where we take all these insights and use them to retrain the ad platforms to find you profitable customers.
Let's start with bounce velocity. This is your first and, honestly, your most brutal diagnostic tool. It simply measures how many people land on your page and leave in under 5 seconds. A high bounce velocity, let's say over 70%, is an unmistakable red flag. It means the problem isn't your landing page copy or your button color. The problem is that your ad basically lied to the user. The click was a mistake, and the user corrected that mistake almost instantly. This metric tells you loud and clear that your ad's promise and your page's reality are in two completely different universes. But here's a key distinction. Not everyone who doesn't convert right away is a digital tourist. And that's where scroll depth correlation comes in. This metric tracks how far down the page your users are actually scrolling. Think about it. Someone who scrolls 70–80% down your page is not a tourist. They are actively processing information. They're what we call an information forger. They have genuine interest. So if they scroll that far but don't convert, the ad did its job. It brought the right person to your site. The problem now is with your offer or the clarity of your page. This metric is crucial because it helps you distinguish between bad traffic and a good lead that you just failed to close.
Okay, so we've got the metrics, but why do they work so well? To really get it, we have to explore the deep-seated human psychology that underpins this entire system. This is what makes the whole framework so predictable and so effective.
It all comes down to this really powerful concept called scent interruption. I want you to imagine you smell freshly baked bread. You follow that amazing scent down the street and you're anticipating this warm, delicious loaf. But when you walk through the door, you find yourself in a tire shop. That jarring confusion, that sense of disappointment you feel, that right there is scent interruption. It's the psychological shock that happens when an expectation is violently unmet, and it's exactly what a digital tourist feels when they click a vague ad and land on a very specific sales page.
And this slide right here perfectly illustrates the direct relationship at play. It's incredibly simple. When the scent of the ad, the promise, the language, the vibe, the imagery perfectly matches the landing page, you get a high conversion rate. But when there's a mismatch, you get a high bounce rate. The user feels misled, they feel tricked, and they leave. Your job as a marketer is to maintain a consistent, unbroken scent from the very first impression all the way to the final conversion.
And look, this isn't just marketing fluff, it's all grounded in established behavioral science. Information foraging theory says that we as humans are wired like animals to find the most efficient path to valuable information. Scent interruption breaks that path, and so we retreat. An effective ad uses what's called the curiosity gap. It opens a little question in the user's mind, but the landing page must close that gap with a satisfying, relevant answer. If it doesn't, the user just leaves unfulfilled. And finally, there's the commitment heuristic. It's a bit counterintuitive, but users who have to work a little harder to click by, say, reading a more specific, detailed ad, are neurologically more committed to the outcome. They've already invested mental energy, so they're pre-qualified. So, the big question is, how do we translate all of this theory into actual practice? I mean, it's one thing to understand the psychology, it's another thing entirely to apply it. So let's walk through the exact steps you need to take to execute your own intent audit.
Your path to mastery really involves 3 core actions. Step 1 is the Creative-Intent Audit. Your goal here is to write ads that filter the crowd, not seduce it. Use language that speaks directly to your ideal buyer and their specific problems. Step 2, apply the time on site filter in your analytics. You need to tell your ad platform to just ignore the bouncers and only optimize your campaigns based on the behavior of visitors who actually stay and engage. And step 3, this is the master level move. Implement friction hooks. This means intentionally adding elements to your ad, like mentioning the price or stating who the product is not for, to actively repel those low-quality clicks before they even happen.
So how will you know you've achieved mastery? This chart right here is the sign. Your cost per click, that bar on the left, might actually go up a little bit as you start bidding for a higher intent audience. But your cost per acquisition, the bar on the right, will absolutely plummet. You're paying a little more for each click, but a dramatically higher percentage of those clicks are turning into actual customers. This is the ultimate proof that you've stopped buying traffic and started buying intent.
Okay, let's bring this all together. It's time for the final core insight that should honestly shift your entire perspective on marketing. This is all about moving away from that empty pursuits of volume and moving toward the sustainable creation of real value.
100 real buyers are infinitely more valuable than 10,000 casual browsers. This isn't just a catchy phrase, it's the fundamental mathematical truth of this entire system. Your goal is not to get the most traffic, your goal is to get the most profitable traffic.
Every single dollar of your ad spend should be laser-focused on attracting those 100 buyers, not the 10,000 tourists.
And that leads us to the ultimate takeaway. If you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. The cheap click is the most expensive mistake you can make in marketing. It's a siren song that leads your strategy straight onto the rocks. It wastes your money, it pollutes your data, it confuses your algorithms, and worst of all, it convinces you that you're succeeding when you're actually failing. True growth comes from paying what's necessary to acquire a genuinely interested customer, not from finding the cheapest way to get an empty click.
You know, in the end, it really comes down to this. The best marketing isn't about pushing people through a funnel. It's about pulling the right people toward value. By filtering for intent, maintaining the scent, and focusing on value over volume, you're not just creating more profitable campaigns, you're building a more sustainable business. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Are your ads starting a real conversation with the right people, or are they just shouting into a crowd?